How you guys doing? It's Sep here. Welcome back to another episode of PES 2018 PESology series for gameplay and tips. Now, obviously, this is going to be useful if you're playing myClub as well, because when you play myClub, a lot of managers, you can basically customize your attack and defense instructions. The only option you have is advanced instructions. So, for example, when to use which of these advanced instructions? False winger, it's good to use if you want your wingers to kind of drop more central and drop lower. Normally, I use that if my manager attacking area is wide and I want to be focused more centrally. Defense is pretty useful as well. Normally, I would use defense. Let's say I have an opponent spamming Cristiano on the right side. I use defense on Carvajal, or I simply make my fullback a CB. Or most of the time, I use defense on my DMF. However, on myClub mainly, sometimes I don't use defense on my DMF. If your opponent is making those direct passes to their striker, then don't use defense on your DMF. Because when you use defense on your DMF is going to be around or behind, most of the time, the striker. But when people do that direct pass, bypassing the midfield play to the CF, I actually don't use defense on my DMF because he's always going to be in front the striker, intercepting the passer rather than trying to mark the player. So that is the purpose of defense. It's one of the most used advanced instructions. Hug the touchline, normally if I am leading by 2 goals, obviously the opponent's going to press you high. Hug the touchline is pretty decent. After minute 70, switching into it. Or if you generally just like to play wide instead of, staying more central. And it explains everything there as well. Attack and fullback is very useful if you want to be more offensive. Obviously, when you use attack and fullbacks, your fullbacks will overlap and your wingers kind of come more central. Normally, if my manager attacking area is wide or support range is very high, I actually do use attack and fullback, so my wingers will kind of cut in. And most of the time, attack and fullback is good as a decoy. You're on the ball, you stay on the ball, fullbacks cuts in, kind of drag the defenses. It will basically drag the opposition's defense to go more wide when the fullbacks overlap, and it will give you space in the center. So that is the use for it. At least that's what I use. Wing rotation is pretty decent. If you're one of those players who like to stay on the ball on the flank to wait for smarter player movement, wing rotation is pretty decent. Normally I use wing rotation or false 9 if I feel like my striker is marked, because when you use wing rotation, even your striker will give you support on the flank. Tiki-taka is pretty decent, of course, if you like one of those players who, if you want your teammate to stay close to you when you're on the ball, tiki-taka is pretty decent. And apart from the... and obviously the main reason, playing tiki-taka. Now, there's a difference between playing ping-pong and playing tiki-taka. Tiki-taka is all about triangle passing back and forth, while ping-pong is just about doing quick passes and going forward all the time. So, mind you, the disadvantage of tiki-taka, your players will not make runs behind the opposition defense. So you can use tiki-taka and play too direct. False 9 is pretty decent. I normally use it if I'm playing 3-4-3. Your striker kind of drops, your flanks cuts in, pretty decent. And it's useful as well if your striker is marked, because when that striker drops, it will pull that defenders with him, and it will create space on the flank. Center and target is pretty decent, whether your manager has wide attack area or wide support range, you always have a striker in the box. And of course, it's mainly useful for a crossing game. False fullback is something I don't use that often. Normally, if I feel like I need numbers in the midfield, like Pep Guardiola's system, then I do use false fullback. But not as something I don't use it that often. Now, let's talk about the defense instructions. Wingback. Wingback is useful if you're playing 3 at the back. But of course, if you're losing, you gotta remove that. And most of the time, if I'm playing 4-3-3 and I'm leading by 2 goals, I change my game mentality to blue and I will activate wingback. If you're playing 4-3-3 and you use wingback, it will basically turn into 4-2-3-1 because those wingers will kind of come back. Tight marking, I don't use it that often unless I'm playing against somebody who's constantly spamming one particular player. Deep defensive line is useful, if you're playing against somebody who's constantly long balling you and your managers has high defensive line and being frontline pressure aggressive, deep defensive line is useful. But do not use deep defensive line against players who are smart and it will build up around your box. It's the same thing with Storm the Box. It's useful against people who Normally I used to recommend against a crossing game, but you want to stop the crosser rather than trying to defend the header. So normally I would use swarm the box if somebody's doing a lot of 1-2s down the middle. But of course, don't use swarm the box if somebody's playing on the flank too often. And when you use swarm the box, you're going to give your opponent a lot of space in front of the box to actually shoot. Counter target is one thing I use a lot. When you use counter target and you have a corner kick on you, you will always have a player up front not coming back to counter the opposition. And most of the time, if I have a formation with AMF, I do use counter on AMF. Like if I play Messi, he's got low stamina. So counter target's really, really important as well. And most of the time, I use it if I'm winning by a couple of goals. It's minute 70 plus. I use hug the touchline, counter target on both flanks. Because when the opposition is losing, he's going to press you high. And the best way to counter him is basically going wide. Now, Gagging Prayers, it's something I'm really not a fan of it. Because we have defensive line bars. We have attacking style, frontline pressure, or all-out defense. And in the meantime, we have aggression, conservative, or aggressive. I'm not a fan of Gagging Prayers because it will literally make your defense defend for you. Especially right now in early October. Hopefully they will patch that game after October. Yeah, I mean, if you have a team with high stamina, use it. Normally, if my opponent's not confident on the ball and doing a lot of passes in his own half, I do use Gagging Prayers. But I wouldn't use Gagging Prayers against smart players. Unless you're like one of those guys who like to play at the edge of your seat. You may want to start with it, score a couple of goals, and then remove it. Or maybe after minute 70, if you're losing, the opponent's kind of time wasting, Gagging Prayers, change your game mentality to red, not all out attack, unless it's like minute 85 plus. And that's pretty much about the advanced instructions, guys. Make sure to implement it on your myClub managers to compensate what you don't like about particular manager tactical links. If you have any questions, comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, share and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And I would like to thank all my subscribers for the support, as always. Till next time, I've been Sep. Ciao for now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to turn your notifications on so you will get notified when my next video will be live. Greatly appreciated, guys. Also, if you want to catch up on my live stream, I do live stream the myClub series as well. You can just go to my Twitch channel. Link is in the description. You can click on past broadcast or the highlights.